So, I heard you want to code.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Roblox Studio scripting tutorials. This is episode 3, and we are going to start working on functions and loops. So, I guess if you wanted to explain it in some kind of real-world terms, you can think of something like a function is like if I pressed a button, it runs a group of instructions, and that group of instructions is encased in a function. So the function runs the group of instructions, and the function is called when you press a button. For instance, if I had a light switch that was, you flip it on, and that would in very simple terms, run a set of instructions through electrical currents that would then turn on the lights. And if I switch the light off, then it runs the instruction by cutting off the electrical current and turning off the lights. So that's a simple way to think about functions. It's basically just a group of instructions that can be ran whenever you want. You can call them whenever you want, and yeah. So let's start with something simple. We're gonna go to our server script service, press plus, and add a script. In here, we are going to do our formatting code that we talked about in an earlier episode. I think last episode we talked about these. And I'm just gonna fix it up. Here we go. Okay. So this is just text. Everything I've got here is just text. It's not going to affect your script whatsoever, and you don't necessarily need it. But I'm gonna have it just to keep things clean. Now, we're going to make a function that prints a message. And I'll show you two ways of doing this. So let's say, for instance, we had a local function. We'll call it print message. And then that's that. Okay, so we'll call it print message 1. And I'm going to explain what local means too, because I didn't do a good job of explaining that in the first video. But basically, let's say that I made a local variable in this function, and we said local var1 equals hello. Okay, so we have our variable 1 equals hello. Now, if I tried to access that variable from outside of this function, I can't because it is local here. So I'll show you that. var1, or let's say print var1. And you see, it underlines it in red because it can't read it. However, if I were to make this a public variable like this, you wouldn't want to do this, but you could technically read this variable from outside of this print message 1 scope. And a scope is basically what's going on inside of here and what's going on outside of that function. So if I wanted to have multiple scopes, I could do something like, well, for instance, this outside of this print message 1 is already a scope. Everything below and above, that's one scope. And then inside, we have another scope. Now, if I wanted another one, I could do something like task.delay 1 second and then another function. And this is another scope right in here. So those are scopes. So basically, let's say again that I had a public variable in here. So if I did var1 equals hello, and then I wrote down here print var1. And you could technically do this. You shouldn't, though. What you should be doing is write things. If I wanted to use that variable outside of this scope, outside of our print message one scope, then I would want to make a local variable at the very start here, and we would call it var1 equals hello, just like that. And because it's local, but it's in the main scope of our function, then we can use it anywhere within our function, or anywhere within our script, sorry, because it's in the main scope. So as a local variable in the main scope, you can access it anywhere within your script. So I'll show you that. So if I wrote var1, or let's say print var1, you see there's no issue there. It would print hello. But you also have to call your function. And again, think of whatever's inside here. This is your group of instructions. And to call your group of instructions, to run that group of instructions, you would have to do print message 1 and then these brackets here. And the reason we have brackets up here when you're writing a function, so local function, the name of your function, and then these brackets, the reason these brackets are here is so you can put arguments in. For instance, if I wanted to put a custom message into this argument, I could write something like message to print, and if you wanted to, you could set it so this can only be a string. A string is going to be basically just characters, alphanumeric characters that can be used within your print, or you could set it to a string value or anything like that. So in this instance, let's say that we print var1, so it's going to say hello, and then we're going to print whatever message to print is. So message to print. And as you can see, when we put print message 1 down here with the brackets, we didn't enter any custom message. So this is going to be nothing. This is going to just be an empty string. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to enter in a string here. We're going to put space, world, exclamation mark, and then close our brackets like that. So what it's going to, or what it should do in our output down here is when we run the game, it's going to say hello, space, world, exclamation point. So let's see if that works. Let's go and run our game. And would you look at that? It says hello, space, world, exclamation mark. And that is just a simple example of how you would make a function to print a message. We could make this make a little more sense by simply doing print message to print. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a prefix variable. We're just going to call it prefix. Local prefix equals then square bracket, server, square bracket, colon, space. So just like that. And then what you can do is in your print here, and what print does is it simply prints something to the output. And printing is basically sending a message to your output for you to read in your later in your testing if you want to. And this can be useful for things like debugging. And debugging is finding issues within your scripts and finding where things go wrong. Is pretty much what you're going to be using printing for, or just to I guess you could be using print to just kind of visualize when code is running. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do something called string concatenation, which in Lua is done like this: prefix dot dot message to print. And what this dot dot does is it connects this string, our prefix string, to another string, which will be our message to print. So let's say I did print message 1, hello world, just like this. Then we tested it. It's going to say server in square brackets, then colon, hello world, exclamation mark. And there's another quick example of how to use one of these functions. Now, we're going to make a function that does something a little more useful in your game. Let's say, for instance, that we had a part, and we're going to anchor it, and we'll change its part color to blue. Now, let's make it a little bit bigger, just like this. And we're going to do a different, I'm going to rename it too. I'm going to rename it touch part. And we are going to now get a reference to that touch part by doing this. Local touch part equals workspace, find first child, touch part. So basically what you're saying is in workspace, find the first child, and child is just one of these instances within the workspace. Find first child with the name touch part, which is this. So now we've got a reference to our touch part. And so you can think of this reference here as our part. Now we are going to do a .touched function, which is done by doing local. I guess we could do it this way. We'll do touch part .touched colon connect function hit. And basically what this does is when the touch part is physically touched by a character or another object within your game, then it connects, because this is an event. Right here, you have your event. The event is that the part was touched. And so then you connect that event to a new function, and within that function, you're given an argument from the touched event. The touched event passes an argument of whatever part touched our touch part. So, for instance, hit. Let's say I walked over the part with my right leg, and then I went like this and did print message 1 hit dot name. And if I walked over it with my right leg and only my right leg touched the touch part, then it is going to print our server prefix, and then it'll print right leg or like right foot, whatever it is, whatever part of my character touched the touch part. Okay? So, but instead of doing this, we are going to do something like this. We're going to say local humanoid equals hit.parent find first child humanoid. And what this does is a humanoid is in pretty much every Roblox character that you're going to find. If it's a normal character, normal rig, then within the character, there's a instance called humanoid. And this humanoid holds things like your health, your walk speed, your max health, your jump power, things like that. And so what we're going to do is hit dot parent. That means if the right leg is what hit is, what is the parent of right leg? Well, it would be your character model. And your character model is, I'll show you what that looks like. So let's say right here you have your right foot. So there's my right foot down there. Now, if this right foot touched the part, then the hit part is this right foot here. And when we look at the right foot, it is parented by my character model. Therefore, when I do hit.parent, we are getting this from the right foot. So we've got our character model, which keeps everything related to our character inside of it. So now we are checking that the humanoid, I guess I should have showed this. We're checking that there is a humanoid within the hit.parent. So let's say this part over here, this little gray block, touched this blue part. Then it is going to run hit.parent find first child humanoid. But it's not going to find a humanoid because that's a spawn location. It doesn't have a humanoid within its parent, and its parent is workspace. So, but if I touched it as my player, it's going to run hit.parent find first child humanoid. And so let's say my right foot touched the blue part. Then it goes right foot to its parent, which is the character, and then find first child humanoid. And right here, we have humanoid. And as a player, you're going to have a humanoid within your character. So now let's make sure that the humanoid exists. This is done using an if statement. And we'll say if humanoid, then. And basically all this does is it says if humanoid exists. So if this right here was not found, and for instance our spawn location touched our touch part, then this is going to be null or nil. And so what that means is that the humanoid would not exist. And instead of running the code inside of here, it would skip over this if statement and it would run the code down here. And so what we want to do is simply say something like if it's found a humanoid, then what we're going to do is we are going to change our touch part's color just to, give a visualization of our function working. So we're going to do touch part dot brick color equals brick color dot random. And what this does is it changes the touch part's brick color, which is one of its properties, and it takes a random brick color. So it could be any one of these brick colors in this palette here. And that will happen every time that we touch the part. And now you're going to see that it happens pretty rapidly when I touch the part. So I'll show you that real quick. You see how it it's like we're only touching it with our eyes. It looks like we're touching it once. But really, since I'm walking on it, I'm touching it a whole bunch of times. And so it's rapidly changing the color. Now that might be an effect that you want, but in this case, let's say it's not. How would you make it so that it only changes once per time that you touched it? Well, you could do something like this. We could make another variable. Let's say local debounce equals false. And debounce is used, it's just a term. You don't have to call it debounce. You could call it crocodile for all you know, for whoever knows why. You could call it crocodile, but I'm going to call it debounce. And we could do this. We could say if humanoid and not debounce. So this is saying, sorry. And this is saying, if the humanoid exists and this debounce is false, which it is, then we change the brick color. Now, in order to stop the color from rapidly changing, we can do debounce equals true. And what this does is basically it says it sets this debounce to true. Therefore, when we run if humanoid and not debounce, it's not gonna run this code in here because debounce is now true instead of being false. If I just wrote if humanoid and debounce, then it's checking, does debounce equal true? And then if it does, and humanoid exists, then it runs the code in here. But in our case, debounce starts as false. Therefore, we want to use if humanoid and not debounce. So we're saying basically, if humanoid exists and debounce is equal to false, then we can do this code in here. And so next, you are going to want to do something like task.wait 1 or maybe 2. And this is saying to your script, wait 2 seconds before you continue from this line. And after this line, we're going to set our debounce back to false. That way, after 2 seconds of standing on the part or walking away from it, you can change its color again to a random color when you touch it. And we'll see this when we play. So we go over here, you touch it, and it changed color. And we wait 2 seconds, touch it again, and it changed color. But if I dance on it, it doesn't change rapidly like it was. I guess now it does. And that's just a common issue that we could fix quite easily. And I can show you how to do that. You could put it within your if statement here. You could say if task.wait, or no, sorry, if humanoid and not debounce, then change the color to random, set debounce to true, wait 2 seconds, and then set debounce to false. Now you'll see that you don't have any of that rapidness. So you step on it, dance on it if you want, and you see it's only changing once every 2 seconds now. And then if I stepped off, step back on, it changes. Step off, Step on, it changes. But if I keep on going off, on, it's only going to let me change it once every 2 seconds, as you can see. So that is a simple way of putting functions, and I guess we covered the touched event. I was planning to do loops in this video too, but I think the video has gotten pretty long just from this, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split this. I'm gonna do another video shortly here where I'll cover loops, like for loops, while loops, whatever other loops there are. We could do a repeat loop too if we wanted. But I'll show you that in the next video. I hope what I've done here has made sense to you guys, and I do hope to see you guys in the next one. If you have any questions or any suggestions, make sure to leave them in the comment section, and I will be sure to get back to you. Yeah, for now though, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.